So hey there. Hey there. Thanks very much for checking out my YouTube videos. I do greatly appreciate it. I thought I'd do a quick little weekly update, which is kind of what we do here. We're in my printer studio. I do a little podcasting. I do a painting. That's one of my paintings up on the wall. Generally speaking, Turo is a hobby for me. So I'm running two cars. If you haven't visited before, I've got a Hyundai Genesis from 2013. I've got a 2014 Mitsubishi Outlander with the V6 and the third row. So it's a nice little sport utility. It's been pretty decent on Turo for me. I just added in the Hyundai this month to see, if we could actually move forward and try another vehicle and see what kind of works there. We lost some video content on it, so we're kind of playing backtrack on that as far as showing how we bought it, why we bought the car, host of things. But they're there in the videos. You might want to check the listing on the channel. It'd be greatly appreciated. Right now, we're sitting at about, I think, 425 subscribers, which is great. Appreciate it. But if you subscribe, and I end up getting to that 1,000 mark, which is kind of, I guess, a pinnacle in the YouTube world from that standpoint. I do appreciate the 425 that are there. It's great, appreciate it. But it would be nice to get to that point where I can say, okay, now we can get some monetization in, which would mean I would be able to buy a better quality camera and perhaps a lapel mic for when we're doing the in-car little shots or when I'm out in the driveway doing maintenance items, things along that line. So by subscribing, you're just contributing with kind of that little thumbs up and motivation to move forward and increase the quality of the YouTube items that I present. So that's essentially it in a nutshell. So again, we greatly appreciate it. Hit that little subscription button, and that's my PBS moment. So I do appreciate you as far as that's concerned. Let's get into this week's update. So, well, we're coming close to the month's end. So I'm doing up the bookkeeping and accounting, and we're in the red. So that's problematic. But we're on the red because we just finished doing the purchase on the Outlander, not the Outlander, the Hyundai Genesis. So that's outstanding. Debt. We did pay cash for the car as part of the it's part of the formula down the states where you take a cash car business premise. We've talked about that as well in the other videos, where you're under certain budgets. So there's no payments. You can run minimum insurance. You're right at that cusp with depreciation where it's kind of settled down. So it's kind of just doing that little thing for the next little while. So we're not seeing that rapid depreciation you'd find with a brand new car or even a 3-year-old car. We're in that little area where it's nice and steady as far as that's concerned. So it's predictable in an ideal world. So that's what we're shooting for there. So with that said, we have bills that are coming in for maintenance and repair. So we've got the safety to pay for. We already pay taxes. These bills are essentially taken care of, but they're still in the red in the books. In other words, that car hasn't earned anything at this point, which has me a little concerned. So it's one of those things where we got to address pricing and some marketing issues to try and get it up and running. Goal on that one, because it's a cash car. The business model on it is to have it on Turo for between 12 months and 17 months, and then we'll rotate out of it. The Outlander, we were going to rotate out of it, but to be honest with you, because we did some mistakes with it, as far as just operating it as a Turo operator, we lost some time and we lost some momentum in spots. So I wanted to keep that on the platform a little bit longer. It's done okay. Has it done spectacular? No. But again, we're just starting. So we're fumbling and we're making mistakes, but we're still moving forward. The idea with the Outlander was to graduate it up into a higher end brand, to go into something like Range Rover, something along that line, or something that would fetch a little more on a daily rate. But then I was looking at the numbers. I thought to myself, you know what? The Mitsubishi is doing reasonably well. I've got it on average 15 days out of the month, which is kind of not bad for what I assume is my neighborhood, which is pretty quiet. Like I'm in kind of the bit of the boonies, so usually people have to make an effort to come and get it. So I thought to myself, you know what? It's been doing okay. We're going to leave it. We'll reassess it in 6 months. We'll go from there. And it still fits into that cash car premise. And the idea, or at least initially, was to try and replace the vehicle and then move it up a little bit. Replace the vehicle, move it up a little bit, and then get 4 premium cars for Turo, but without having to outlay a premium price out of budget. So that's the idea, is to kind of just build forward, take any equity we would have built in with the Turo platform as it buys down the car down to zero ideally, and then we could either sell it off and move up, throw a little bit of money into the mix, move up, throw a little bit of money into the mix, move up. And at some point, I'd have 4 premium vehicles to work with. That would be the idea, but without the outlay. Like that's the concept before it. Now, at least that's my idea. But I got thinking to myself, we look at all the cash car YouTubers out there that kind of put their information up there, opposed to all the folks that seem to put up these mid-range or exotic cars. The cash car ones seem to be fairly steady and very reliable as far as the daily rental is concerned. So it's one of those things where, do I just graduate up, 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 or do I stay at the cash car level where it's kind of predictable? Like really, it's one of those things where if I bought a higher end car, I'm working with depreciation. If I'm into a cash car, not so much. If anything, I put equity into the car because I've now safetied it. I've now done the service work. I brought it up to a standard. So if I had to sell the car, I'm going to be either at the price I paid for it. I might cover some of the taxes. There's going to be a bit of a wash there, but it's one of those things where I couldn't do that on a new car where I've lost 20 or 40% in equity because of depreciation. So the cash cars seem to be a pretty safe investment. So I'm thinking I may stay with that, but I may fine tune what I've got. Lately, like with the Hyundai, I bought what was available to me and what I had access to that was in a relatively easy proximity. In other words, I'm working with the area. I don't have the ability to move into Quebec or make a run out to the other end of Ontario to find a deal. So when something comes up reasonably local, like an hour drive, I'm going to look at it and take it seriously, regardless what it is. And luckily, it's paralleled up on where I'm familiar with it. So I worked with Hyundai for a few years. I'm familiar with the Genesis line, and I'm familiar with the Hyundai Genesis and the V6 in particularly. I'm very, very well read into it. I've also experienced some of the service and maintenance items that are already associated with it. I know what the parts costs are, and I know what the service cost is. So it's one of those things where I got into the car where I'm very comfortable with it. Because of that, I went into a car that's a little higher in kilometers. Normally, I like to stay around that 150 on a cash car. This one's touching up against that 200, but it's offset by service records. And it's also offset by the fact that I've just done some of the major maintenance components. So I should be okay for up to 250K without having to worry about anything dramatic happening to the car, as far as that's concerned, at least in my mind. And the price I paid for it, if I can get 12 months of Turo out of it, I think that will clear the debt. And then we'll be at zero, which seems like a pointless endeavor because the goal is to make a little bit of money. But if I get another 6 months out of that 12 and we move to 17 months, well, then that's where that profit margin, I think, on the car will be created. Or maybe we'll luck out. I don't know. Maybe it'll book out 20 days out of the month. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll be beyond that. So it's one of those things where it's a gamble. So it's still in the red. So it's one of those things where we have to pay that down. It's like any other small business you get into. So if you open the door that day one and you've already outlaid inventory and you've outlaid insurance and you've outlaid utility bills and you set up your phone and you've hired staff, well, your first day is not going to be the first customer that walks through the door and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, that first bill is 17.5 because I have to pay for everything. So in other words, it's going to be kind of split up over the next 12 months to pay down the debt that the car has created. Now, the debt is not created on a banknote. It's not created on a credit card. It's a personal debt. In other words, that car owes me. I'm looking at the cars as if they are individuals or they are a player in my team. We're taking that playbook idea into the Turo world in my mind. So is that a superstar player? Don't know yet. So it's one of those things where if it is, maybe it's a surplus. Is it going to be a mid-range player? I'm hoping. Is it going to be a high demand? I don't know. We don't know yet. But based on the fact that I'm familiar with the car, I'm gonna say that it's probably a bread and butter, middle of the road, going to do okay. And I think if somebody falls in love with it or it becomes a long-term renter for someone, that's great. I think it's going to be reliable from that standpoint. Turo seems to be really pushing these month rentals. I don't want to really get involved with that, to be honest with you. I'm shooting for that 2 to 3 week rental. I'm really looking for that insurance job. I'm really trying to market my cars towards that. Or the person is saying, I'm going up north. I'm going to take her for a 2 week trip to the cottage, or I've got to make a run up to Owen Sound, or I need to go to Thunder Bay, which has actually been a lot of my clients so far. I had a little cycle there where it was one family where they were coming in from Kitchener to here to do work, and they would rent it for 3 weeks while they were on the contract job. That was great for a little while too. But again, I don't want that daily rental. I want to be in that 2 to 3 week range, or a long weekend booking. And we talk about that in the other videos as far as what is the true cost of Turo when it comes to time. There's a video that we talk all about that. It is not a passive income. It does require you to clean the car, service the car, maintain the car, park the car, drive the car, all sorts of wonderful things. You got to do the administrative end of it. So in other words, if you're doing the 2 week or the 3 week booking for me, that's ideal. That's the sweet spot where I make a little bit of a profit, and I can mitigate my time a little better that way. And if I go into a month rental, that 4 weeks is really kissing on the point where, because we're into an older car, I like to be able to physically go through the checklist and make sure that there isn't anything coming up that I can catch early before it becomes a problem. So that's kind of the goal there. If I'm getting into a 3 month rental, and the way Turo has it set up, I'm essentially becoming a short-term lease provider. And I've done that in the past. So I've had my dealer license way back in the day, and I did in-house leasing. And the way they've structured it is it's essentially an in-house lease, but without the protections you would have being a leasing company in Ontario, Canada. So the insurance is limited. And it's not Turo's fault. It's just the way they've managed to make it for profitability. That's how they're doing it. So they're hoping that someone will take a 3 month rental, but I've got to take a 45% discount. So if I take a 45% discount on what my cars are priced at, because they're bread and butter, they are what we describe as the cash car model. My 40% moves me into an area where potentially I'm not making any money, if anything, losing it. And then they put the kilometer range on the vehicles in a comfort way to be able to say to the client, hey, they're essentially unlimited. So we're not going to bill you when you bring the car back and you put 25,000 K on it in 3 months. The dilemma with that is that some of the Turo hosts, I don't know if they realize this, or it's just a lack of experience, or they're new, or is based yearly, definitely. Like that's definitely a depreciation calculation. But it's also based on kilometers of use. So if I get a car that's got 0K on it, and this is going to be the one that's going to hit really, really hard. So I bought a new car for Turo. We're going to put it on there, and I've got it up for the first year. And I luck out, and Turo sets me up with a long-term renter who takes it for 3 months. Well, in that 3 months, what if they put on 30,000 kilometers? Well, in Canada, the average yearly driving is 24, right? So now I'm over the year, and I still have 9 months left to kind of fill into there. Let's say someone else takes it for another 3 months, and they put another 20. Now I'm at 50,000. My warranty at that point is 5 year, 100,000. So now I've just shot out essentially 2 years of warranty. It is now down. So the factoring of the kilometers on the monthly rental doesn't make sense. Number one, the 45% discount that they apply makes the car not profitable unless I'm at a regular pricing structure. So if I'm running a vehicle without discounts on my weekly, or like I go to a discount of, I think it's 20% on the 3rd week. So I'm geared to really get that 2 and 3 week renter, or that person is going to go over 3 days. Like I'm really shooting for those. So I price my vehicle competitively in the marketplace. So I'm not the highest, I'm not the lowest, but I'm in the middle, kind of in that price point, based on the category of vehicle, not the branding. So in other words, I'm not putting Cadillac money out. I'm not putting Mercedes money out. I'm putting CX-5. I'm looking at other 5-passenger SUVs, like a Nissan Pathfinder. And I'm trying to be in the middle of there. So someone will look at it and kind of go, oh, well, it's got a few extra features. It's got the leather. It's got the roof. It's a GT model. It's got some other appealing items that'll make a renter want to take it. Then they'll go, oh, the price is very reasonable. And then they'll go and book, and they'll go, oh, well, not only is it reasonable, but I now get a 10% discount, which now makes me kind of in the marketplace at the lower end, right? So now I've got a client um, that's going to book out of motivation of saving a little bit of money, having an appealing vehicle to take, and the ease of the transaction. Because again, Turo, you don't need to have a credit card. So my stuff kind of just complements that immensely from that standpoint. Plus, when you look at my ratings, and then someone will do a little Google search, and lo and behold, they'll come across my videos, and then somehow they'll go, "Oh, well, he seems like a pretty reasonable guy to rent a car off of," and I am. So it's one of those things where I've had a couple clients who've had issues with other Turo hosts where they said, "Oh, well, we've had dirt on the floor, or cookie crumbs here and there," and I'm like, if you take the vehicle for 3 weeks and you've got it loaded with kids, I'm anticipating you're coming back with muddy mats. I'm anticipating that the backseat's going to be filled with Cheerios. Like that's just the nature of it. Like that's what a family vehicle is. Now, if you got chocolate fingerprints on the roof liner and someone's been drawing the family tree in crayon or black marker on the door sills and all along the leather interior, well, then we're going to have a conversation, right? There's going to be some billing involved in that. But that's just the nature of it, right? So we've been bleeding cash. So what can we do about that? Very little. So October was kind of a write-off, but October had some other issues attached to it. So we had some personal stuff going on. So it kind of threw a little grenade in the action and activity. So December, I'm hoping it's going to roll up and be a little more profitable. So my fingers are crossed on that. We'll see what happens. Holidays. Last year, December wasn't great for me, but January was. January and February was pretty decent. So we'll see what happens as far as that's concerned. We just started to get into the idea of doing our own marketing. So we're going to start putting together um, like a little mini brochure for insurance brokers. We're going to start putting together some business cards. We're going to do a little press kit kind of thing to send out to some local businesses and see if we can draw up some business from folks that might have employees that come in for a week or two. Again, trying to get that Hyundai out a little bit more. So I've got to kind of move from relying on the Turo platform because I'm in a small market. So I can't rely on the volume of the population. I've got to kind of get out there and maybe drum up some business. And by business, I'm not looking to get like dominate the marketplace. I'm looking to get an extra 10 days of bookings. So I think that's very doable if you kind of keep that realistic approach to it and go from there. So that's where we're at. We are doing some preventative maintenance this week. So we did the snow tires on the Outlander. So we took that down to the local Meineke shop where they pulled the old tires off, cleaned the rims, resealed everything. Um, really nice. I'm very happy with the job they did, and I'm very pleased with the snow tires. So the snow tires we picked up, they're fairly new. We got a great deal on them. So it's one of those things where that was a savings. The installation cost was a little higher, but not by much. But it's one of those things where you look at, do you buy a steel rim separately, or do you go with the factory wheels and mount and unmount? And this year we went with the factory ones because last year we went with the steel wheels and the little light came on. And I had a couple of remarks in that regards about the tire light being on. In Southern Ontario, Canada, it is very normal if you're a Canadian to be very familiar with the snow tire indicator on the dashboard, which tells you that you are riding with snow tires all the time. It's not a run flat or a tire pressure indicator in the wintertime. It's your snow tires are installed light. So that's the way I like to kind of point that out from that standpoint. So this year we went with putting them on the actual steel wheel, putting them on the actual alloys. And I'm actually really pleased with that. It rides nice. We went on with a nice set of snow tires that seem to be not too loud. You can hear them, but now it sounds more like an SUV roll than anything else. So it sounds a little bit like a truck. So it kind of feels good from that standpoint. And the Outlander, if you ever owned one or you've ever been into one, they kind of sound like a truck anyways. So they're kind of, the V6 isn't exactly the most modern engine in the face of the world. The transmission isn't the most modern. The rear end isn't either. They're all kind of bulletproof as far as the mechanics are concerned, which is why I went with the V6. And the transmission that's selected with it goes the distance. So it's like your traditional old 90s powertrain from the 90s. Like that's for the Japanese. Like it's pretty much not going to do anything. They're really solid from that standpoint. And they take a lot of abuse. Think of like the old Toyota SR5s. That's kind of what this Mitsubishi Outlander in the GT formula with the V6 and with the geared transmission, not the CVT, they are kind of like a throwback to the old Japanese cars. On that, we decided to order in because we had the tires off. Pads and rotors, so they are on order. I tried to buy them locally, um, so I went and had a quote and said, "Well, give me a through European Nappa, Canadian Tire, a couple of the other parts suppliers." And again, we're right back into that same story we had with the Hyundai. I would have liked to have been able to buy something locally, and because I'm going to do the work in the driveway to save a couple hours worth of shop time, which a couple hours in Ontario, Canada, is about can be anywhere between $100 and 180 an hour, depending on what shop you're going to. So I'm going to save $200 to $300 easily in labor charge by doing the brakes myself. And then normally they would charge about an hour to do the service, and they might charge a little bit of time to do the braking, um, the parking brake service, which is something I do every time we do the brakes, anyways. So normally I would have switched over steel wheels. I would do a brake service, but because we had the shop do it, I asked them, "Hey, how do they look?" And they said, "Hey, it's at 15 and 25% on the pads, The- and the rotors. They do look okay. Like they're fine. I could probably get away with throwing on just a set of pads, like a preventative thing, and say, okay, that's done. We don't have to worry about it until a year or two down the road." But I go online, and this is the problem: is that I'll go on to eBay, which is eBay is kind of where I go for car parts. Um, by the time I look at a place that does free shipping, I can't really get free shipping on a smaller order. So you kind of go, well, there's a reason to spend money, right? So you just kind of go, okay, well, let's throw some coated rotors in there, right? So now we're doing coated rotors, and we're doing brake pads. And the main reason being is that by the time I pull those rotors off, like the old ones, I throw them in the car and run them down to the shop to get them machined. The shop where I'm at does a really nice job. They charge like $35 to do it because they do it in their off time. So, and they'll measure them out to make sure they're decent. But it's the timeline. So in other words, I'll drop them off on a Monday. I may not get them till the Thursday because they're just doing it in between jobs. Now they may do it that Monday. Like I'm not saying that it takes, but it's just the nature of it, right? So, and then I'm going to come back with still rusty rotors. Like they don't do they're not refinished. They're not freshly painted or coated. They're not restored to their original level. So then I look at the price on eBay and I kind of go, well, for $200, which is what it was at, I can get the rotors, the pads, and a ceramic pad. So a good serviceable rotor without machining and everything like that. And I just bolt everything up and be done with it. And Bob's your uncle, as far as that's concerned. So we're going to do that. Probably not this weekend. We'll probably do it next weekend. It'll probably take a couple of days for it to arrive. But again, trying to buy something locally, um, availability was a problem, which I find strange because on the Mitsubishi product, which is why I like Mitsubishi, is a lot of times they will take, like for instance, the rotors on my GT are the same rotors that you'd find on the Lancer GT. They kind of share parts in platforms. So when you see that, you kind of go, okay, well, what are the components? Well, they're also used on some Chrysler product. So Mitsubishi is a provider for components. They make parts. It's kind of what they do. So when you do these little searches for little components on my Outlander, you kind of go, well, I can't find it for Mitsubishi. The majority of the time, it's somewhere else. You just have to do the little internet search or the run through the forums to find it. But usually that part is in another car. And it's usually in some random bizarre car that you go, oh, okay, that's the V6 is a good example. It's in a bunch of vehicles. So can you find a Mitsubishi yada, yada, yada? Maybe not. But you can find the equivalent with maybe you have to take the bracket off and play with a little bit, but it is in another vehicle. So it's one of those things that if you're into Mitsubishis, you kind of go, okay, certain lines that they have get to be a little sparse when it comes to components. And I can understand that on the local level, right? So I get that. But then they gave me a quote on rotors. And I was like, oh, so to get two front rotors, I was at almost $200, and then I didn't even get the pads yet, right? So, and these are like white box jobber parts. These are not like fancy racing components. These are just here you go, and it would have taken a couple days to get them in. So by the time I order off eBay, I'm saving. So I'm getting the rear brakes basically for free. I think that's what it boils down to, along with all the little fittings because I order everything in. So I'm getting all the little sliders and all the little pins And the reason I do that, because I'm just going to go in and just change everything. Like I'm there doing the labor anyways. So I'm going to clean everything, put everything back together, lubricated. I'm going to replace all the serviceable parts and get it back on the road. And then I don't have to deal with it now for other than brake services when we do the tires, which is where we just lubricate things and clean stuff up. I want to deal with it now for another 24 months, ideally, if we keep it on Turo that long. Or when I go to safety it, if I want to sell it, which will be a debate probably in about 6 months. If I go to sell it, I can say, hey, look, you know what? Tires are good, brakes are good. Ball joints, tie rods are all good. Brake lines are good. It'll pass a safety without an issue. And so I now have a safety on a car. I can retail it out, and I will probably break even on the sale of the car. And then my profit would have been deferred. So in other words, I make money on Turo. Turo is buying down that vehicle as we go along, but I don't see the money in my pocket. It's going to pay that debt, which is owed to me, right? But it's going to pay that amount out. When I go sell the car at the 16th month or the 17th month portion, really that's my profit. Like that's the payday that comes in and goes, oh, well, there it is. That's a chunk of cash. And then I can take that chunk of cash and I can either reinvest it back into Turo and buy a slightly nicer car. Because I'll have a little more money because I have the carryover from what I made at Turo, minus the expenses and yada, yada, yada. The profit from selling the car, do I go ahead and reinvest that? Or do I say to myself, it's not worth reinvesting? Keep that money in that car and keep rolling for another 6 months. So that's where we're going to have that debate about ROI and cost. So that's what we've been doing as far as updates are concerned. We're getting closer and closer to tax season too. So again, we're trying to keep the bookkeeping and accounting in order. So when you take it in, it won't be an issue. That's something that you really need to do I try and do it every 3 months just to kind of make sure everything's kind of in the box appropriately and everything's inputted. But it's one of those things that if you're new on Turo, you're going to want to do that monthly. So you know if you're losing or if you're ahead of the game. And so at the 12th month, when you're going to go into your bookkeeper or accountant, we're not going to be wealthy enough to be able to have a daily um, finance manager. So we don't have that. You're wearing that hat. So you'll want to be able to make sure everything's nice and organized. So you're not doing that frantic last week of the year. Oh my God, where's that? You want to be able to say, okay, this is January, February, March. Everything's all reasonably easy to follow. You just have to kind of keep it that way. You don't have to be a professional, but you have to make it so it's somewhat there. All right. So again, maybe we'll do a thing on taxes. That's not a bad idea. Maybe we'll do a video on taxes. I did a couple little videos this week on OMBEC. So we're going to go through the OMBEC book. I'm going chapter by chapter. So we're just kind of hitting the spot. So we talked about the as is chapter, and we've got another one coming up about, geez, I forget. Chapter 5. What was it? It was very small, but I'm chewing them in the car. So in other words, I'm just using the camera on my phone, and it is this little guy right here. So we're using a cheap little cell phone to do these little car vignettes, which I think look pretty good. I'm going to try and get a lapel mic to improve the audio quality. We're working on that. But again, we're also waiting for an increase in subscribers and viewership. So it's one of those things, just kind of cart before the horse, I think, before we go ahead and kind of do up. So you're still getting the wonderful in studio space. You're still getting the dodgy internet from my provider, and you're still getting the iMac experience from my auctioned iMac. So again, I do apologize for that, but at the same time, I work a full-time job. I do a few other little things on the side as well. So Turo is literally a little side hustle for me. So to go and do big productions or spend a whole host of time doing editing, it doesn't really help me in any way, shape, or form. Whereas I think documenting kind of what I've been doing with these little live contacts are pretty decent if you're into Turo. So that's the thing. If you're into car repairs and some other little stuff, this is probably a little long-winded for you. But if you're trying to do the Turo platform in Canada, there really isn't a lot of information out there. It's all US based as far as that's concerned. There's a couple little guys up here, but there's very few actually doing the daily, kind of this is what's going on or this is the process. And I'm hoping that even in my unprofessional way, that there is some little tidbits of information there that you can apply and say to yourself, oh, good, I've avoided that problem. Or maybe you're in some small town and you kind of go, well, everyone talks about the big centers. How does a Turo vehicle operate in Atwood, Ontario? which is I'm in a very small little community. I'm adjacent to Listowel's a little bigger, but it's still a small community. How does that work? And does it work effectively? Like, is it actually profitable? Would I say it's overly profitable? No. Has it covered the costs? So it's managed on the Outlander. It's managed to pay down the depreciation. It's put a little bit of money in my pocket to pay off paying for the vehicle. It hasn't paid the vehicle off yet. Um, it's covered insurance cost. It's covered maintenance cost. So if I were running it as Turo kind of markets the service for the initial entry level, um, is it a nice complement to a vehicle I already have and own? Yes, it is. So it'd be one of those things if it was just a spare vehicle in the driveway, or it was a thing where I was working locally and I could walk to work. I don't need the car. Like now, I could schedule it around Turo. I would say it's a pretty decent program to get into from that standpoint. If you're looking at it from the standpoint of saying, hey, I want to go buy a car and I want to run it as a business, it's very slow to start. The first couple months were kind of quiet. Strange enough, I did book it, but it was one of those things where I think I booked it out of my inexperience. So in other words, I was using the automated pricing, hadn't been updated, so I was under market on the bookings. So I was getting the economy renter, but I was getting some volume, and all I was really worried about then was I wanted to go through the exercise of booking things. But inadvertently, I've managed to get a little bit of cash out of it. We had a little falter with the inspection on the 6 months, not related to the vehicle, related to Turo's communication and me being relatively new. And to be honest with you, it got put on the back burner a couple times. So it moved from being like, oh, I got to get this done, to we're waiting on the inspection. The inspection's been completed, waiting for Turo to get back to me. Then I get back to Turo, then Turo would get back to me. And Turo is really bad when it comes to communicating. So it's one of those things that's, if you're doing email responses, they're terrible. So I got to the point where I actually had to physically call them and say, hey, look, I've inputted this. This is there. And I think I lost 3 weeks or almost a month on that. So again, it's one of those things, rookie mistakes. So we lost some time on that. But in the first year, I would say, yeah, I'd say it's a success. We'd give it a partial thumbs up, not the best experience, but okay. And that's where this Hyundai is coming in. We're going to say, okay, well, we're starting off fresh, along with the Outlander, and we'll see how that experience is. Now, I did add in a Chevy Cruze for a little while there too, and that got blown right out of the water. Like in the first week, it was like, oh my god. So if you're looking at first vehicles for Turo, entry level or economy cars, if you're doing the automated pricing, definitely don't work. So it's, at least in my neighborhood, it's got to be high volume. So if you're in Toronto and you go, oh no, and again, if you have to say to yourself, I don't want my car, you're gonna have it out 30 days out of the month. If you could do that, then a basic economy car at like $30 a day is probably going to be okay. But out here in my neck of the woods, if you're booking out 10 days out of the week, you're kind of going, well, it's not really a good player on my Turo team. It's a low performer. So I'm looking for that middle guy. So I'm trying to get to that. I need $50 or $60 a day rental. And that's just enough where I can etch a little bit of profit to be able to buy down some of the debt and kind of move forward. So it's one of those things where that became very confusing as far as that's concerned. So that's our weekly update. October is pretty much a bust. Not a lot of activity, personal reasons, along with Turo just seems to be slow. And we did that video where we kind of checked to see what the market was doing. You want to check that out. That's a great way to compare cars. That's, I think, on the video section, not on the live section. We did it, I think, with a phone. So you might want to check that out. Again, I think October was pretty quiet. They got the new marketing stuff coming out with Turo. They gave an announcement that they're trying to push for long-term or monthly rentals. Again, not the thing I cater to, but it'd be nice to see some marketing material out there, be that internet ads or something along that line. I might start to put together a few little things related to some local marketing. So it's one of those things where I've been talking with my little AI, and we kind of came up with a brainstorm. So we might do a couple little YouTube videos kind of geared as a local introduction to Turo. So we might do something where the content is driven to Atwood and Listowel or the surrounding areas, where we do like we're in our Turo car, we're going to go check out such and such. We'll go see the local burger place. We'll go check out some of the local scenes. Maybe we'll go to a couple of the car shows, things along that line in the Turo car, right? So we might do that. It may not play out at all, but it's one of those things where I can't afford to run a local ad in the newspaper. I don't think that would work anyways. I really can't afford to run a radio ad. Like that's crazy. Can't do that. But not on two cars and not on a platform that I don't own. If I owned a rental company, I would say, well, maybe. I can't really afford to print T-shirts for everybody. So there's that. Can't do that. So we're business cards, and we're going to be doing that little mail out or that kind of little press release to like insurance companies and say, hey, they're available. If you're jammed up and you can't get a local rental, or you're going to find somebody that has an issue, maybe they don't have rental coverage, and you've managed to put them behind the eight ball and they need to get to work. Or maybe I'm the only one that can give you an option that's cheaper and also an option that doesn't require a credit card. So that's where we're going to shoot with that. And that's kind of what we're up to for the next December month. Again, December, fingers crossed, but hopefully some of that marketing material we get out will start to work. Okay. Have yourself a pleasant and enjoyable day. Hope you enjoy the internet. And again, appreciate thumbs up. Thank you very much.